Hello everybody and welcome to our first session of Warhammer 40K 101. Tonight we're going to be talking about list building. Again, we are recording this session for the Rogue Trader Market forum. But don't be afraid to ask any questions. There will be a time for questions intermittently. But try to hold your questions until I get through the section, because I will probably answer your question at some point. So, we played a couple of games of 40K, and the list building has been not so good. I have seen a lot of no-nos. I've seen a lot of wasted points, and we're going to talk about how we can get the most out of our lists. So, I want to start by talking about the HQs. A lot of people run into the problem of spending way too many points on an HQ. HQs are a necessary part of your army. They're part of the core requisites of 1 HQ and 2 troops. But with all of the war gear that's available in some armies, especially armies like the Space Wolves, where they just have a ton of war gear to add on, and you can just keep piling it on and piling it on and piling it on. It's very easy to fall into the trap of point sinking into an HQ, and you don't want to do that. The reason is that an HQ is generally only one model. And in games, especially lower point games, the more boots you can put on the ground, the better off you will be. So for most games, I recommend that your HQ be no more than 20% of the list total. For example, in the 500 point games we've been playing, that 20% total would give you 100 points, roughly, for your HQ. Now, it's okay to go over by 5 or 10 points, but you don't want to spend 180 if you can avoid it. There are, however, some good things to spend points on as far as war gear. So invest in your war gear wisely. Things that give you stat bumps. Okay, for example, bikes or jet bikes that give you a +1 toughness are a good investment. Things that give you an invulnerable save or improve upon your invulnerable save are good investments. I play Space Marines, so Storm Shield would be another good thing to invest in. Things like Power Claws, Power Fists, if you're an assaulty army, can be worthwhile investments. There are some downsides to these kind of things, but they do double your strength. That's another stat modifying piece of war gear. So things that bump your stats, things that increase your toughness are worth looking into investing. But again, at some of the lower points we've been playing at 500 points, you don't really want to spend more than 100 points on an HQ. You want to invest. You want to have those points to invest elsewhere, which we're going to talk about. Troops. This is a big one. I see a lot of people not spending enough on troops. You can never spend too much on troops, especially with some armies. Troops are your boots on the ground. Troops are what can take objectives, hold objectives. Troops will score you a lot of victory points in a troop-heavy army, especially in swarm armies. I can't stress enough, for swarm armies, you have to invest in troops. If you're a swarm army and you're trying to march 10-man squads across the board with no transports, you're going to lose. Transports are another worthwhile investment for troops. You should have roughly 30 to 50% of your entire list value sunk into your troops, bare minimum. If you don't have at least 30%, you're doing something wrong. And that's all there is to it. Infantry plays a big part in this game. Warhammer 40K is an infantry-based game, and a lot of people forget that. Your infantry is what wins you games. Things like elites, things like heavy support and fast attack can't hold objectives. They just can't. They can contest objectives, but if you want to score victory points in an objective-based game, you sure as shooting better have at least 3 troops on the field, or more. Now, Imperial Guard kind of skirts this rule because of the infantry platoon structure. The infantry platoon contains 2 infantry squads base, plus a platoon command. Plus you can have up to 3 more squads in the infantry platoon. Plus you can have up to 50 conscripts. Plus you can have up to 2 special weapon teams and 2 heavy weapon teams. And that's just one troop choice. Multiply that by 2 and you can take a lot of objectives. So it's a very important thing to consider when you're constructing your army is taking objectives, because a lot of the new missions now are objective based. There is the secondary victory condition of victory points, but at the end of the day, if you can hold objectives, you're going to win the game. If your opponent can't put the troops, the boots on the ground to hold those objectives, and you can, you're going to win the game. Dedicated transports for some armies are invaluable. Can't put a price on them. Anyone that gets a fast attack type dedicated transport, like the Eldar Skimmers and the Dark Eldar Raiders, those are absolute worthwhile investments. You need to get your army across the field, and Skimmers can get you there fast. Things that are fast, like an Orc truck, also invaluable investments for your troops. Now, they kind of limit your squad size, but if you're trying to get into assault quick, they're cheap. You can get a lot of them on the table if you spend your points correctly. At 1,500 points, you could probably spam 6 or 7 Orc Boys squads in trucks. No problem. And if you went all-out Orc Boys, you could probably get 8 or 9 Orc Boys squads with transports on the table. Whereas your Space Marine is probably only going to get 2 or 3 tactical squads on the table at that point value. So you're looking at outnumbering your opponent 2 to 1 with transports to get you across the field quicker. Do the math. You're going to win all day. Okay. Number of attacks, which we'll talk about more in the tactics section, but number of attacks plays a huge role in the outcome of assaults. And the more models you have in the assault, the better your chances are of winning. So get those troops on the field. Now let's talk about the goodies. What happened here? Okay, goodies are situational. The reason why there are a plethora of elites and heavy support and fast attack choices is because they don't all work all the time. For example, if you're running against Chimera Vet Spam, which for those of you who aren't familiar with Chimera Vet Spam, is basically as many veteran squads as you can get on the table in Chimeras and roll them out. Your land speeder with a multi-melt and a heavy flamer probably isn't going to do you a whole lot of good. The multi-melta will be good against anti-vehicle, and you can bring them down one at a time, but you really want to invest in something that's going to be able to engage multiple targets, or is guaranteed to bring those transports down quicker, like a Devastator squad. Or in the case of the Eldar, you might decide to go transport to transport.
Oh, I thought you were going to mention fire dragons for the Eldar.
Fire dragons are good against tank-heavy lists.
Yeah.
The problem is, with fire dragons, is that once you get them close enough to blow up a tank, they're dead. Because whatever comes piling out of the tank, or whatever's nearby, is going to come and make you pay for whatever it is you just blew up.
Yeah.
The Eldar do have the advantage of rapid deployment, as do the Dark Eldar. I guess we haven't really talked a lot about swarm armies. If you're running up against a swarm army, you want to get as many multiple shot and template weapons on the field as you can. Whereas with the tank-heavy armies, you need as much tank busting as you can get. I want to talk about Land Raiders for a second, because I know we've got some Space Marine players in the house. And let me tell you something. I know that Land Raider looks really tempting to put on the field. Really tempting. Okay, I know. I have 2 of them. But if you're staring down a bunch of Bright Lances and Dark Lances, it's probably not a good idea to put that Land Raider on the table. Because those Lance weapons reduce your armor to 12. And 250 points is a lot for one tank. And they're all going to be focused on your Land Raider. Turn 1, they're going to try to get as many lance shots on your Land Raider as they can. So maybe take a couple of Predators instead. You can still get the anti-tank firepower out of a Predator that you get out of a Land Raider, without the power of the machine spirit to be able to engage multiple targets, but you can still get as much anti-tank firepower out of 2 or 3 Predators as you can get out of 1 Land Raider. And it's going to be much harder for them to focus fire, or maybe it's not going to be much harder for them to focus fire, but they're going to have to prioritize targets better to make your Predators pay. So, more models is better. Whenever you're talking about heavy support choices or fast attack choices, don't sink all of your points for heavy support and fast attack into 1 unit. It's tempting, especially with something as sweet as Land Raider, to dump all 250 points into it. But again, against the right opponent, they're going to make you pay. And you're probably going to lose that Land Raider turn 1 or 2. Deep striking. Let's talk about buying deep strike units. You always want to deep strike in pairs. Whether it's drop pods, or jump pack troops, or Terminators. You always want to deep strike in pairs, because if you send 1 unit back there, you're going to be throwing away a ton of points. Your unit will get down the field, will deep strike in, and if you get lucky with your deep strike, they're going to deep strike right where you want them to go. They're going to blow up 1 thing, and then they're going to get slaughtered. Now, it may not always work out that both of your deep strike units come in together, but that's okay. Again, this is a little bit more on the tactic side, but always buy 2 deep strike units. Yeah.
When you say deep strike in pairs, you need 2 units of deep strikers?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Buy your deep strike units in pairs.
Okay. So like for Eldar, Warp Spiders, and Swooping Hawks.
Or 2 units of Warp Spiders.
Or, yeah.
Personally, if I were the Eldar player, I'd take 2 units of Warp Spiders over the units of Warp Spiders and the Swooping Hawks. Because Swooping Hawks kind of suck.
Yeah.
No offense.
But yeah, no, I like
Just
them mostly
saying.
for their bomb effect. Like, that's the only reason why I use them with the bomb before they land. That could at least take out some Imperial Guard, the way I see it. But that's just me.
Well, we'll talk more about stuff like that in the tactics section.
Yeah.
But you want to buy your deep striking units in pairs. Mm-hmm. That way, you're not just sending one unit behind enemy lines to die.
Yeah.
Plus, again, it'll give you more flexibility in target priority, and it will force your opponent to have to choose which unit is the more threatening unit. Now, some people are better at this than others. I will say that. Some people are better at target prioritizing than others. So, you may take the gamble, and it may not pay off for you. And, of course, with the way the reserve rolls work, you might not actually get both of your deep striking units down in the first turn. You might get them one on one turn and one on the next turn. But it's having that secondary threat there that's going to get your points out of those deep striking units. We'll talk more about deep striking placement and where units and how you want to place your deep striking units in the tactics section. We'll actually make a mock board up here. It's too bad I don't have a telestrator or access to a telestrator. But we'll make another presentation, and by the way, we're going to be filming the next segment of this in 3 weeks. Elites. I haven't talked about elites yet. What can I say about elites? There may be a temptation to spend a lot of points on elites, because elite units tend to be very good. Very, very good. Much better than your basic troops. And you go, oh, well, these guys can probably win me the game, because they are so awesome. Which, as you Space Marine players will find out with Stern Guard, yes, they are that awesome. But they're also a big target. So you want to be careful how many points you sink into your elites choices. With something with as expensive as the elites choices are for an army like Space Marines, I don't recommend buying more than one or two. In the size games we've been playing, I wouldn't buy more than one, and if I bought one, then I wouldn't have the points to spend on a heavy support choice. You follow? Mm-hmm. Okay.
So it's elite unit or heavy support.
Right, because you don't want any of your goodies to exceed about 30% of your army list in total points. Mm-hmm. Because again, those aren't scoring units. Those aren't going to win you the game. If it's an objectives game, it's a victory points game, they might. If your opponent doesn't send their whole army after your one unit because it's doing that much damage. And Stern Guard will provoke that kind of a response. But for an Eldar player, you may want to take 2 or 3 elites choices. Eldar elites are very good and are not as expensive as Space Marines elites.
Oh, really?
That's good.
Fast attack. We kind of already talked about deep striking, but a lot of armies have the option to buy fast attack units in groups. The Tyranids, they have a whole squad of fast-moving flyers called gargoyles. Now, they don't actually count as flyers in the...
Aren't they flying monstrous creatures?
They're not monstrous creatures. They're just flying creatures.
Okay.
Gargoyles are little like this. Yeah. They scare easily, and are afraid of the dark. Okay, maybe they're not afraid of the dark. I don't know. I'm just making that bit up. But they do scare easily. And they'll return in greater numbers.
I see what you did there. I'll stop now.
So I don't think Eldar have the option. Do Eldar have the option to buy Falcons as squadrons or no?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I do have my codex with me, so I can check that out real quick.
Because I don't remember.
I don't think so.
Okay.
Squadrons of what?
Falcons.
Yeah, no, it's all individual.
Okay, it's all individual. That's kind of what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Covering my ass.
Yep.
Anyway, this can be good and this can be bad. Buying units and squadrons. Bikes, things like bikes, are great. Bikes are very flexible. They give your troopers a +1 to their toughness, and it's no longer used. They no longer use the parenthetical notation, so you no longer use the unit's base toughness when calculating instant kill requirements. Meaning, if you have a multi-wound toughness 5 unit on a bike, a strength 8 shot will no longer instant kill them. A strength 10 shot will get the job done. But there aren't very many of those in the game. Especially not ones that can affect large numbers of models. But bikes are very flexible. Bikes can be equipped to take on infantry and be equipped to take on tanks. And some bike units can be equipped to do both at the same time. Really depends on your bike unit. Yes.
Does the HQ for orcs count as a bike? Was DACA?
We'll discuss units like that more in the tactics session.
Okay.
Basically, all I want to say about that is he's probably too many points to be using in such a small battle. Because he's what? At least 200 points,
Nope.
probably. No? 150?
180.
180. That's a little steep. Now, in 1,000 points, you could get away with it if you've got a unit of bikers to back him up.
2 units. The bikers.
Well,
They're
make him
bonus troops.
join, but he needs to join one of those squads, is
That's
what I'm
the
saying.
plan. And he's got a unit of bikes back on too.
Okay. So you're talking about taking an all-bike
Yeah.
orc list. All-bike lists are fun. They're expensive as hell. They limit your number of boots on the ground. And the units are smaller. Bike units generally run from 3 to 10 models, depending on the army. Space Marines, it's only 3 to 5, but I believe orcs
Can go up to 12.
can go up to 12. Okay,
I'm running 10 at each.
10 at each. Okay, yeah. I don't remember what the protocol on Eldar bikes was, but I've never seen a squad bigger than 5.
Let's look at that. Shane, how many bikes can you run? Check your codex.
For my
Eldar.
Eldar jet bikes. Fact checking.
3 to 12.
3 to 12.
They're kind of true, so awesome.
Only if you have
A specific person.
a commander on a bike
Oh, yeah.
do they count as troops.
Okay, it's like if I were to put a warlock or forester in a bike.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. The trick to all bike lists is knowing when to engage and when not to engage is something we'll cover in perhaps a bikes only session of Warhammer 40k 101. But it's not something we're going to really cover today.
Okay. Yeah, here.
my screen keeps going out? Because I changed the screen somehow and I'm not sure how to get it back.
Upper left corner from current slide. Click on that. Upper left. Down. No. To the right one. That one. There you go.
There we go. Much better. Again, fast attack units are situational. There are going to be times when you may not be advised to take a fast attack because they're not going to be very effective. We'll talk more about that in the tactics section. Fast attacks vary in point cost from really cheap stuff like Space Marine land speeders, for example, are cheap. Space Marine bike squads, not so much. But, well worth their points. We'll talk about why Swooping Hawks suck in the tactics section. I love the models, but I'm sorry, the unit sucks. It just does. I heard they were supposed to have made improvements to it, but no. Again, in the tactics, we'll talk about why Swooping Hawks suck. I think that about covers it. All I wanted to cover today. Does anyone have any questions about list building? This is your time to get your questions answered.
I got my questions answered last week when I talked to you after.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered anything I was questioning about the Space Marines, so I
Okay.
think I got the gist of it.
Well, if you have points left, how do you prioritize
War gear,
war gear?
Good
I mean,
question.
if you don't
That
have
again
enough
goes back to the stat. You want to start with stat bumping war gear first.
like the attack squig I showed you for the war boss.
So would it be better to get invest in a higher cost stat boosting to a few units, or lower cost better weapons to more units? I mean,
Well, what are you talking about upgrading? Are you talking about upgrading your HQ, or are you talking about upgrading your
if I build my
troops?
list and I've got 50 points left, and I don't have there are no particular units I want to get with that. Should I go for a reflector field on someone, or should I go for
Yeah, give it an invulnerable save, sure.
Okay.
That's definitely worth. Anytime you can give an HQ an invulnerable save, it's
Always get the
worthwhile
war
investment.
boss cyborg fodder.
So do that over I was thinking Imperial Guard, but do that over giving a squad or giving some of my squad Meltas or Plasma.
It depends.
Okay.
What are you up against? If all you need is volume of fire, and you're expecting to get assaulted, then the invul save is not a bad investment. If you don't feel you have enough volume of fire, like with Imperial Guard, you can never have enough volume of fire. I don't care what you've got on the table, it's not enough. It's never enough. There's no such thing as overkill.
Always need more DACA.
Now, if you have 50 points left over, and your HQ is already over 100 points, you should start looking to invest those points into your infantry. Because that's your boots on the ground, that's where you're going to get the most bang for your buck. Okay, if you've got that many points left over, if you've got 10 or 15 points left over, invest it in war gear for your HQ. Or take an upgrade for your HQ. Like with Imperial Guard, you could take a Regimental Advisor for 15 points.
You're not going to paint that with ketchup, are you?
Okay.
That's funny, because you got the ketchup.
Speaking of Imperial Guard, how would you decide when building your list whether to put out a heavy weapons team or put out more?
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. Let's talk about purposing your units. When you build a unit, whenever you put any kind of unit together, what you need to have its purpose in mind when you're building it. If you're building an anti-infantry squad, you want to put in high volume of fire weapons. Okay?
Like plasma guns?
Like plasma guns that rapid fire, or flamers. Because if somebody gets close enough for you to use a flamer, you are going to get a ton of hits off of that flamer template. Especially against a swarm army. Because there's so many models in a swarm army on the table, they're packed in closer together. You drop that template, hold on a second, you could hit 20 guys. I've done it.
How do you compare the difference between a template and like a rapid fire weapon? I mean, how do you decide which is better situation?
Are you expecting to get assaulted? That's one of the questions you have to answer. Are you expecting to get assaulted?
Well, if I'm expecting to get assaulted, would I rather have like 10 more guys with las guns, or would I rather have 3 guys with mortars? I mean, how do I decide that?
Volume of fire. Very simple. A mortar drops a template, but a las gun, that's 2 shots per guy. Over 9 more guys plus a sergeant. It's a volume of fire issue. If you're expecting to get assaulted, you don't want mortars. Plain and simple. You want template weapons. So you want flamers. You want your rapid fire las guns. Because Imperial Guard has the order of first rank fire, second rank fire. If they get close enough to you to assault, you're going to be within range to get a full first rank fire, second rank fire off with your full rapid fire. That's 3 shots per guy. So if you're expecting to get assaulted, go for volume of fire. If you're expecting to advance up the field with that unit, go for volume of fire, unless you're building a tank hunting unit. If you build a tank hunting unit, then only advance on tanks and take anti-tank weapons like a melta weapon, like a lance weapon. If you're going to be advancing up the field, though, you want assault weapons, not heavy weapons. Because you won't be able to move and fire the heavy weapon. Okay, you had a question. Did I answer it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. So purpose your units. Every unit should have a purpose. Most of your focus should be on killing troops. This is a troop-based game. If you can't kill troops effectively, you're going to lose. I don't care how many tanks you can kill a turn. If you can't kill troops effectively, you're going to lose.
Okay, cool.
So, when you're purposing a unit, again, you're purposing for anti-infantry, go for volume of fire. Mortar teams have a use. And if you can bubble wrap your mortar team enough, then they'll be able to fire the whole game.
So say like for a single platoon of Imperial Guard, don't really invest too heavily on heavy weapons teams until you've maxed out your infantry?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, you shouldn't be looking into heavy weapons teams. Special weapons teams are a different story, because you can kit out a special weapons team with flamers, you can kit out a special weapons team with plasma guns, and you have 3 guys with las guns on top of that in the squad, because it's a 6-man squad. 3 special weapons, 3 dudes with las guns. And you stick them in a transport and wheel them around the table. Get them into a position where they can do a lot of damage and let them go. They are cheap. They are only ballistic skill 3, which is why I'm a big advocate of special weapons team with flamers, if you can get them in a position using a Chimera or a Valkyrie. Although they just released the new special rules for flyers codex, compendium, whatever they are calling it, and Valkyries and Vendettas no longer have the scout rule, so you cannot outflank with them anymore.
Okay.
Something to keep in mind
Awesome.
when you're purposing out your lists. And as far as dedicated transports go, most dedicated transports are geared for anti-infantry. It's just the nature of the beast. There are some you can kit out to hunt down tanks. And if you feel that you have a hole in your anti-tank capability, you can generally fill it on a dedicated transport for not a lot of points. If you want to sink that much into dedicated transport. Personally, I would look elsewhere to get that anti-tank, because dedicated transports are only designed to hold up for a turn or two of fire to get the troops to their destination. Any other questions?
I think we're good.
Yes.
Cyclone missile pack worth it on wolf guards. If you're gonna put the wolf guard with long fangs.
No.
One of them I'm talking about. Don't think cyclone, okay.
Nope. Because your long fangs are going to be generally an anti-tank unit.
Okay.
And cyclone missile launchers do not have the punch for anti-tank. So every turn you're firing at a tank, you are wasting the points that you put into that cyclone launcher.
Okay.
Honestly, I would not give Wolfguard a long fang as a Wolfguard. There we go. Unless you expect to get assaulted. And if you're expecting your long fangs to get assaulted, you did something wrong.
Nope.
Any other questions? Shane, you've been relatively quiet.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to make my character. What about a squad of Farseers and Warlocks on jet bikes? Would that be worthwhile investment?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It is because the bikes give them a toughness 4
Alright.
instead of a toughness 3, meaning that an autocannon or a plasma gun or a multi-laser will no longer instant kill your Farseer.
Okay, yeah. Now, would you recommend always upgrading Rangers to Pathfinders? So that's usually what I prefer to do, because that way, even though like moving your Rangers isn't always the best idea, because as soon as they leave their cover, they're pretty much dead.
No, you need to set those up in cover and leave them in cover,
Okay.
regardless of whether or not you upgrade them.
Okay.
Against certain armies, it is well worth the points to upgrade your Rangers to Pathfinders. If you're taking on a swarm army, though, honestly,
Don't worry. Don't.
just buy another squad of Rangers,
Okay.
because that'll give you more volume of shots.
Okay. I heard the thing about dedicated transports.
Yeah, Eldar have some good dedicated transports. The
Yeah, I
Wave
just
Serpent is nothing to
recently,
screw around with.
Yeah, I just recently got a Wave Serpent, so
Yeah, the Wave Serpent's nothing to screw around with.
yeah.
Twin-linked weapon of your choice.
Yeah, the model came with a missile launcher, so I'm probably gonna still magnetize them, but I like them.
I would, well, that's a whole other discussion.
Yeah.
But basically, you can customize the weapon on the Wave Serpent to fit your needs.
Yeah. Like, would you say the scatter laser is one of the Eldar's best weapons due to the number of shots it can do? And
It depends on who you're fighting.
okay.
If you're fighting a swarm army like Tyranids or Orcs or an Imperial Guard, it's great.
Okay.
If you're fighting against Space Marines, you want a Star Cannon.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I love using a Star Cannon.
If you're using it to hunt tanks, well, that's not really what dedicated transports are for, but the Wave Serpent can do it with twin-link Bright Lances,
Yeah.
if you want to invest the points. And they are tough little buggers to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other war gear is worth investing in. with those.
What about for Farseers, the one that makes enemy psychers roll an extra d6 or when they do their powers?
See, that's a tough call. And the reason I say that's a tough call is because most of your rolls it's not going to make a difference.
Yeah, because it just says like if it's above 6, they got a
Perils of the Warp.
Yeah, perils of the warp. That's what I'm looking for. And like I thought it'd be enticed to when
Wait, if the roll is above 6, they have to perils.
12.
Okay, if the roll is above 12.
6, oh god, no, but I
No.
know.
I was going to say, wow, if that's the case, then I would take it every time.
Yeah, but no, because like I thought it'd be like enticing, but when I used it for Ben during our battle when we all had psychers, it really didn't do anything.
No, and it won't.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Your average on 2 die 6 is 7. Your average on 3 die 6 is 11.
Okay.
Okay? Which means unless I roll high enough that I probably would have failed it to begin with, your third die really isn't going to make a difference.
Okay, yeah. Alright. So no, that'll save me some points. For the Elder Otter, I have him with a Reaper launcher.
You do sink a lot of points in your autark.
Yeah, it's the most I think I get him up to is he's usually like 130.
That's not bad.
Yeah, but over what you recommend.
I just think my HQ with space points is 130.
Yeah, well, things like I'm noticing like the Eldar HQs don't really match up too much to a lot of the ones I see in other armies. Except the Phoenix Lords. The Phoenix Lords seem to be pretty good.
And probably you're spending points on a power weapon, right?
Well, yeah, only 10 points for a power sword.
Why are you spending 10 points on a power sword for a unit that you're not expecting to get into close combat with?
Well, for the Autarch guy, I expect him to get in close combat because he seems.
Then why does he have a Reaper launcher?
He's allowed to have one weapon and a two-handed weapon. So,
Okay, but if you're going into close combat, what you want are 2 close combat weapons.
Because 2 weapons gives you an additional
Because-
attack.
Yeah, the thing is, though, I don't think he gives the option for that.
It should.
It said single-handed weapons, power weapons, scorpion chainsaws, which I should take instead because it gives him +1 strength.
Always take a scorpion chainsaw.
Or at the laser lance, and then the two-handed weapons, which are shuriken, catapult, death spinner, fusion gun, lance blaster, and reaper launcher.
I'll have to take a look at that.
Yeah, because like I mean, if I could get dual weapons, I definitely would with him. But until then, he's kind of like the guy I keep from a distance and pick off people.
Then you shouldn't be equipping him with an assault weapon.
Okay.
Just like in the regular close combat.
Save those points. If you're trying to stay out of assault, don't spend points on an assault-oriented weapon.
Okay.
Which is why I didn't take any of the gun modifications with my rune priest.
That means I'll have to like edit the model of it, or should I keep the sword just for like fluff?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
but if you can shave points off your HQ, you want to shave points off your HQ, because the biggest mistake I see, and I see this all the time, is that people try to make their HQ Mr. Epic Badass,
Yeah.
okay, Mr. I rule close combat. They spend 200 points on him, and then he gets picked off before he even gets into combat.
Yeah. Like I just want to make it so he's like efficient, like he's able to hold his own if need be, but I don't want to rely on it.
If you're keeping him in the back, you are probably not going to get assaulted.
Yeah.
Especially since your army is the one that should be doing the assaulting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alright, so he won't. Okay, that'll be 1 point. Alright, otherwise. Another question.
Yeah.
It actually involves
I can use the
powers.
restroom, or do I need to hear this?
Huh?
Do I need to hear this?
Yeah. What's the question?
Oh, this one's specific for Eldar, but
Try to
Okay.
run
when you take psychic powers,
Yes.
do they have to be like for the Eldar? They have their psychic powers. Does it have to be in their book, or can it be like the ones from? Can you also choose ones from like the main rule book?
Okay. Let me explain something about the main rulebook. Psychic powers. Every race is given a list of schools they can take psychic powers from. You can choose to take psychic powers from one of those schools instead of taking your base psychic powers. If you do, they are completely random. You choose a school, and then you have to roll for a psychic power.
Nope, not doing that. Nope. I'll stick with my other powers. But alright. Trying to think of any other questions I had. would you think, say, striking scorpions are better than howling banshees, or howling banshees?
Depends on who you're fighting.
Okay. Okay.
They're both a worthwhile investment in the right situation. That's why I said
Yeah.
elites, situational.
Yeah.
In some situations, the Howling Banshees are going to be a better choice.
Mm-hmm.
In some situations, like, for example, if you are fighting Marines, you may find the Striking Scorpions to be a better choice because you're going to score more wounds.
Yeah, and
They're strength 4, so you have a better chance of landing a wound, whereas the Banshees will need a 5 up to wound because they're only strength 3.
Yeah.
Yes, they have power swords. Yes, if they wound Space Marines, the Space Marines will not get an armor save.
Then their masks allow them to have initiative 10.
Yes.
Only on the first, charge.
No, it's whenever
Yes.
they charge actually. Now on that.
It's on the turn they assault.
Yeah.
It's not for the duration of combat.
It's when they charge.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's a good little beginning attack, but afterwards, are Phoenix Lords worth it? Because I hear the new rule.
In higher point games, things like named HQs are going to appear more often. They're going to be more worthwhile because that 20% I was talking about is going to get bigger. Okay, at a 500 point game, your 20% for HQs is 100 points.
Yeah.
Most HQs will probably come in around 110.
Yeah, like when we eventually hit 2,000, I'm pulling Logan Grimnar, even though he's pushing it a bit.
When you hit 1,000, you got 200. 1,500, 300.
Okay, so 1,500 you can make
Okay.
Grimnar.
Alright, just check.
Now, I try to keep it cheap. Start low. I think I talked about that with
Which is what I did.
Okay. Something I talked about with the HQs is to start low. Don't spend the points if you don't have to.
Brett's still sitting there.
Like,
Well, I'm just fucked up.
at 1,500 points, a lot of times, I still take a base librarian. And that's my HQ. That's it. 100 points. Done.
Alright.
I just took Chooser the Slain useful.
Chooser the Slain is one of those pieces of war gear that's invaluable. It's 10 points, it's worth its 10 points.
And Runic Armor's worth it too, I think. So, for its 20.
Depends on the point value. Again, if you're not expecting to get assaulted, there's no point in
It's more
having
so
it.
for dealing with psychic powers and as well as giving you better armor save.
Not always worth it.
2 up instead of 3 up.
Not always worth it. I dropped an entire squad. Farseer and his warlocks. I dropped an entire squad in one turn with just a librarian.
Alright, I think that pretty much covers it for me. I now know, how to more refine it. What? Your Imperial Guard going down. Just you wait. That one time you're not fortified, you're going down. That one time, that won't happen, ever. With Space Marines cushioning that. I hated that, we're all
Okay, so I have to explain something for our Rogue Trader audience. We played a game last week, and the human side perpetrated a very, very dirty trick.
Oh my god, I hated it.
We had an Aegis defense line. We had a building full of long fangs and snipers,
And just full of Imperial Guard.
and just a throng of Imperial Guard behind the Aegis defense line. And then we bubble wrapped it with a line of Marines out in front of the Aegis defense line.
Release almost wiped out the Space Ball. After, 6 turns?
7.
I didn't lose a single man.
Yeah, no, and
The only person who took a single point of damage was my sergeant, who ended up killing that one
Dark
thing.
Eldar, as far as I can remember, they think maybe lost one model. I know their Raiders got damaged, and it was a few turns. The orcs
Because
were
I kept them off your
decimated.
ass.
And it was great, because as soon as my Dire Avengers got into like range, oh, there you go, 14 attacks, take that. And fucking space
Yeah.
Oh.
So that happened. It was dirty. We liked it.
Awesome.
No, it
Oh,
wasn't.
give me more.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
It was awesome for me.
I want to do it again. No!
And there's gonna be even more! I'm gonna fight the Imperial Guard one day, and they're not gonna be in a building, they're having a fence line.
That's what you
And they'll be squishy.
Yeah, and I'll be like, take this.
Then you're not playing against a very good
Except-
Imperial Guard player, but that's more in the tactics
the problem.
section.
My
Oh,
marines
hey.
are always going to be covered in the guards.
Anyway, I think that concludes our list building session for today.
You know what? You know what?
Please
That
direct
did you
any
so well
questions you
last
have to me, Arcane Tempest, at roguemarket.com. And I'll see you guys in 3 weeks.